What is up, everyone? We are live. No intro today.
Now we're coming in hot.
We're coming in hot because we are having a discussion on Twitter Spaces today. So we're gonna cut out all the introductory stuff. We're gonna be riffing a bit while our Twitter Spaces host Carbon Mike, co-host of a couple of different Rumble podcasts, is setting up that Twitter Spaces. But while we are waiting for him to set that up, make sure to share this everywhere. You are watching the Barracks, your non-Euclidean news network for a multipolar world. We are growing stronger every single day on X.com, but also on YouTube. Like, the conversion rate for people who follow us on Twitter X to the YouTube is an astounding ratio. People are really hungry for this style of content, this MAGA communist style of reporting and also popular discussion. So that's very encouraging. Glad y'all are tuning in. Glad y'all are sharing this around. Little introduction to my right here. We have the one, the only president of the people's deep state, coming to you live from inside of a volcano in the Indian Ocean.
Hey, no doxing.
From his secret lair, petting a black cat. It's your friendly neighborhood Milkman. How you doing, Milk?
I'm doing all right. Looking forward to this space tonight. I think we'll have some good discussion. Trying to spread these ideas. We don't just want to talk to people who agree with us, you know?
Yeah, let me change the banner here. We're setting up on the fly. It's hard. Like, even on a 3-day weekend, I have a rare 3-day weekend, and it's still not enough time to do everything we need to do to grow this channel. Let me put up the ticker here. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, our discussion today is going to be transcending the left-right dichotomy. We here at the Barracks are representing the MAGA communist wing of the popular movement in America. Our Twitter space is going to be hosted by a new associate of ours, Carbon Mike, who's very active on Twitter, calls himself politically homeless, but he's a black conservative, older than I am, so he's about 100.
Well, we're out here to provide housing.
You're right, yeah. So we're going to make the best case possible for MAGA communism. In the meantime, while he's setting up that Twitter Spaces, we'll do some riffing on what the degenerate left and the degenerate right are up to, and why we need MAGA communism more than ever. Because the best thing to do before you start pitching your case is looking at all the sad options you have on like in the political spectrum in the United States. Milkman, you want to talk about? You've been busy getting into fights on Twitter X.
I have. I was very busy today.
Yeah, you spent the last couple of days fighting with Phil Labonte, one of the co-hosts of Timcast. Am I right? Is that where?
Yeah. I mean, he's like a metal guy, but now he's on Timcast, I guess. He's like a singer in a metal band, which I hadn't heard of, but I don't know. I guess other people maybe heard of them. He likes bringing it up a lot. He kind of always wants to bring the conversation back to his fucking band.
Yeah, right-wing grifters.
Days. But he was coming at Jackson, so, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right-wing grifters across the internet have been coming for Jackson as of late, as he's been picking up a lot of traction, in the popular conversation. He was called out by Nick Fuentes. He was called out by
Brianna Wu, this transgender activist who went on and harangued him for not being more censorious.
Yeah, Timcast he was called out by. He was called out by Steven Crowder's whole gang.
Look how they all unite. You actually had Phil Labonte retweeting that cretin from Ukraine, Sarah Cirillo, they're, you know, his whole grift is like bitching about transgenders, but then when Jackson shows up, suddenly they're friends and he's retweeting this person's slander. So, you know, it just goes to show you what we're talking about tonight is transcending the left-right divide. And what I'm going to be saying is that it's really not a divide. It's a fake divide because when someone like Jackson comes along, suddenly they're all friends.
We've been talking about this horseshoe since we got started 2 months ago. And it's, becoming more apparent than ever.
Ron Swanson Stalinist says it feels like he's slowly trying to dip from the debate with Jackson. He should, because he's pretty dumb and he's going to get rolled if he does that debate. But I would like to see it. So anyway, we were going to talk about this tweet because a couple nights ago I was talking about Cornel West and I was talking about how the left has this ABC mentality, anything but class. And this tweet was just too perfect of an example to not talk about. So I don't know. Ryan Grimm is some like squad fanboy, and he's talking about, I don't know, something about unions and disabled people. But this tweet, these privileged people are holding the left back. Homelessness rate is up. We have a housing crisis. Grocery prices increase every week. And this mofo stuck on the answer is unions. I support unions, but that should never be the end game. What about disabled people? What about disabled people? Yeah, and then if you answer the disabled question, it's going to be what about indigenous people, and then what about transgenders, and then what about furries, and it just never ends. That's the game. I support unions, but that's like the leftist version of I'm not racist, but isn't it? Like,
and it's about the most milk toast level position of just, unions are good when really, like, in this country, unions are just in lockstep with the Democratic Party. Like, they're just a way to at this point to dampen class consciousness because of how infiltrated they are by corporate loyal shills. So like just being pro union, is, in the 21st century in the United States, a very milquetoast position to have. Considering
even that's too much.
Even that is too much.
What about disabled people, Teray? What about disabled people are holding left back? Like, here's a crazy thought. What if we focused on like the most able people instead of the most like vulnerable people? You know, what if we focused on like the soldiers instead of people we gotta, well, I don't want to be mean, but I will say that when people say disabled people these days, I don't even know what they're talking about because the definition of disabled has gotten stretched very broadly over the last few years, where suddenly like being fat is like being disabled, or like having ADHD, which is a fake made up disease.
It is.
So
yeah.
if you go see a psychiatrist and you don't like doing homework, well, you're disabled now. Congrats. So like, what about disabled people? Like, what about shut up? What if we like, and she's doing the same thing. I support unions, but what about disabled people? We can walk and chew gum at the same time, but they just keep throwing gum at you until there's all around your feet and you're getting stuck and you can't walk. That's what happens. It's just never ending because you can't give this an inch. What about disabled people? And then it's what about the next thing? And what about the next thing? Yeah, what about disabled trans indigenous unions for baristas?
I was thinking about this earlier today. These right-wing grifters have their typical beat that they stick for, like whoever the racial boogeyman is, or whoever the minority boogeyman is. Nick Fuentes has the JQ, and how Jewish people and as a fringe group run everything, and you have the more boomer type right wing grifter who think that it's the neo Marxists who are, whatever that means, who are this cabal that runs everything, or you have your just classic racists who think that, like, it's Asians or black people who are ruining this country, and their constituents who are ruining this country. So they stick to their own familiar brand of bigotry and divisionism. But then you have the left-wing grifters who are encouraging further and further divisions based on increasingly smaller identity politics. So there is this truth to, if you look at the problem from both the left degenerate and the right degenerate just bashing at each other in the culture war, there is a grain of truth to what to either is talking about. Uh, but yeah, where but the left wing grifters are looking for this, or for state representation for their increasingly fringe ideologies or identities. And you have the ones who are the most organized, like APAC or ADL, uh, which which is probably why the JQ gets so much traction in Europe and America. It's just because they just happen to be the most organized of these like identity based representatives of the liberal state, but they are by no means the only one. Uh, because they come, or even the most powerful, really, or the most relevant, because they rise and fall depending on the hot topic of the year. Because we see that a lot with the rainbow flag, the pronoun people are getting are they might not be as organized as other identities, like with the ADL uh, that mostly defends the interests of well, they all defend the interests of ruling class.
They all
ruling
divide. They divide and conquer. That's what they
Yeah,
do.
that's what it does. And but like one of the more influential in recent months has been the pronoun people, where
Yeah.
I liked the tweet on the Barracks page. Uh, a father in Virginia was dragged out of a school board because he was. Let me see if I can pull it up here. He was
Oh, I
dragged out
think
of
I'm
a.
going to talk. I was planning on talking about this in this space, but I want to say before we move on, what about abled people, Sabby Sabs?
Right.
What about the abled people? What about like the toughest, meanest, strongest members of the ruling class? Or the working class? I mean, who's reaching out to them? Nobody. They're privileged, and we got to ignore them. We got to get like the weakest, most mentally ill, most unstable, suicidal members of the working class, and those are the people we have to focus on the most. It's like, could it be more obvious that they're playing to lose here? And RBN are Democrats. They like to pretend like they're not Democrats because they're always critiquing the Democrats. But like, here's the thing: if you spend all your time talking about like AOC isn't doing this, and she's not doing this, and she didn't talk about this, why are you expecting this from AOC at this point? Jimmy Dore exposed AOC in 2020 with Force the Vote, and it was over. Okay, she's Pelosi. Expecting things of AOC at this point is like expecting things of Pelosi. Even actually, Pelosi was better. Pelosi voted against the Iraq War. AOC is worse than Pelosi, but that's all they talk about. All they talk about is the squad. AOC, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman. They're not doing what we want. Like, they're coping so hard. They can't move on from the fact that these people lied to them and betrayed them, and they're working for the ruling class. They just can't deal with it. And it's all they talk about is that it's like she's not going to do your shit. Give up, move on. And they won't do that because at heart, they are Democrats. They are squad Democrats. I mean, this is Democrats' base. Even these Harry Sisson, Chris Mowry, these guys, even they won't actually come out and be like, yeah, we support Biden, right? They'll be like, oh, well, we're nonpartisan, but Trump is just so bad. That's the same thing RBN is doing. Oh, well, I hate the squad and they don't do what I want, but Trump's a fascist. So like, you're just bitching about the people that you're going to vote for. So like, why would they ever listen to you? They wouldn't listen to you anyway, but it's definitely a type of leftist who has like not been able to cope with the fact that Bernie and his movement were a fraud from the beginning. And they're still all day talking about, oh, Bernie betrayed us and AOC betrayed us. It's like, yeah, they did, but move on. You can't. Why are you still expecting them to do things? It's like every day there's a new betrayal because they're still there to be betrayed. I don't feel like AOC's betraying me because she's a fucking puppet of the ruling class.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I'm going to interrupt you for a second. We got some good news. Our friend over at Future Radio, Carbon Mike, has set up this Twitter space. We're going to hop in and
Wait, do I need to go in on Twitter?
yes.
Okay.
So that I can mute my mic, and all the audio will come in from this page. So keep talking.
Wait, hold on. What? How? You want me to just mute here and just talk through Twitter?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Let's request sent.
Check 1 2.
Bear with us.
I see what's going on here. Check 1 2. 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 1 second, gentlemen.
MAGA Economic Forum says people who still bitch about the Democrats betraying them are about as sad to see as women who complain about their boyfriends beating them but still refuse to leave them. Yeah, it is an abusive relationship that all these
that's better.
entities
Very
have with
accurate.
them party. But it's still, but
Dwayne,
they're
looks
still
like.
willing to, they're still willing to put up with it so long as they are. Ooh.
Deep down, he still loves me. Yeah. Oh, did I say?
Okay, gentlemen, can you hear me? All right.
Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but for some reason, hang on 1 second.
All right.
All right, let's see. What do we got here? For some reason, my audio interface.
You got some sort of crazy echo going on.
I know. Hang on. One, two, three. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can also hear like 20 seconds ago.
Yeah, that's weird. Hang on. Something is screwy with this phone here. I'm gonna switch up my hardware right quick. Please indulge me.
All right.
God damn it. See, shit like this is why I hate computers.
It could be worse. We could be hosting Ron DeSantis for his presidential candidacy announcement.
Don't start. All right, can you hear me properly now with no echo? Gentlemen. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Excellent. Okay.
Oh wait.
Well, here's the thing: you can't be listening to both. If you you have to monitor one or the other.
Wait.
If you're monitoring both the space and the YouTube live stream, you're going to have a delay. So you have to you should probably monitor the space, and yes, you should.
Oh, that's what's going
yeah.
on. I'm sorry. I'm
So
an idiot.
turn off whatever audio source that is.
Yeah, yeah. While Milkman
Okay,
is.
that's my bad.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
sorry. I'm an idiot.
Yeah, so that's what I figured. Well, that's when I messaged you earlier. I figured there would be some kind of delay. I just didn't quite know which direction it would be in. So my apologies, but I'm glad we're all here. Yeah.
No, we're good. We're good. I'm not good with computers either. As
I'm great with computers because I've worked with them all my life, which is why I hate them. It's like those bastards are trying to sabotage us every chance they get. All right. No,
that was embarrassing. Well,
let's
move on.
I know that you're I'm the oldest one at the barracks, but you're even older than me. So, and you're a veteran of the political commentary,
sure.
Beat. So, what for our audience here on our live stream, you want to give us an introduction to who you are? Because we always love expanding the contacts we make here at the People's Deep State.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on. So, my name is Carbon Mike. I'm the founder of the Foundationist Society. The Foundationist Society is kind of a cross between a trade school and a conservative think tank. And we're a home for the politically homeless. Thank you, sir. Yeah, so we're a home for the politically homeless. And we have a very simple manifesto. It's a 10-point manifesto. We call on our members to see deeply, listen closely, reason honestly, speak clearly, act bravely, deny the self, defend the individual, respect tradition, face the present, and cultivate the future. That's our manifesto. That's it. And so the whole point of us, when a few years ago, and we can talk about that later, when I decided that I'd had enough of the left, I didn't immediately jump to the right for reasons which I'm glad to elaborate on. But what I realized was that what needed to happen most of all was that we needed to have higher quality arguments. And having higher quality arguments wasn't a matter of elevating or suppressing either the left or the right. It was a matter of getting at more foundational principles. What is politics and what is it for? Never mind who you want to win. What is it for? Because if you're asking the wrong question, well, it doesn't matter what answer you come up with. So that's the Foundationist Society in a nutshell. I can drill down into that, but that's me. I'm a software development professional. I'm a data engineer. I've been in the software business since 1994 or so, and I still write code every day. And so I bring some of that ethos into my political commentary. I was raised in a working class Black family in New York City. I still live in New York. I'm a lifelong New Yorker, and that also kind of colors my commentary and the way I look at things. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do is get to the bottom of things and not waste time on the surface. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said you had a history, as a leftist, as me and Milkman both have. I assumed you would have been conservative from all the way back to your political awakening, because I know that's the case for a lot some of the people we talked to here that we've had a chance to talk to, with Ruckus Media a couple weeks ago, who's got that military background, but it's for you specifically. I mentioned this when we were DMing each other. I'm a former Black nationalist, which for those of you on stream, that's probably a bit confusing for you. But that sort of Black Panther adjacent momentum in the United States, where this alternative to a Barack Obama style liberalism, if you are not white in the United States, it has that sort of leftist leaning, especially a new leftist leaning, like this 60s sort of new left. Was there, which I'm no longer associated with, but that does, that I'm always moving away from that being my formative years. So yeah, you describe yourself as politically homeless, like which we also have a lot of people we discuss who aren't explicit, Stalinists and Marxist-Leninists. People in the United States increasingly describing themselves as that independent, as politically homeless.
Yeah.
Your
audio is going in and out a little bit. Sorry, were you asking what was my path away from the left? Is that like how did I get to be here?
Yeah, because I think it's important to ask why why the path away from the left, when you have nowadays you have 20% of Black people in the United States are now more in the Trump camp, when even 4 years ago it was only 8%. So was there this immediate shift, almost like a traumatic moment? Or
that's a great question. Well, first of all, a little statistical thing. It's not actually 20% of the people in the United States. It's Trump got, I believe, 20% of the Black turnout last time he ran. Which, let's face it, it's praiseworthy. I don't care for Trump personally, but anyone who can do outreach and kind of shift the needle away from the liberals, the political liberals, and their kind of mad project having done that work, that is in itself a good thing. And I have a lot of MAGA people in my circle, and I love my MAGA people. But it was 20% of the turnout, and the turnout itself, the Black turnout, I believe in the last election, it was only something like 63%, according to the Brenneman Center. Your numbers may be different, but there's nowhere near 100% Black turnout. So, so that's one thing. Now, on to the meat of the question. What was my journey away from the left? Well, I was kind of a nationalist. I don't know if you'd call it a nationalist, but I was definitely an angry young Black dude for a long time. And I definitely remember being in those conversations. I remember being in those ciphers. I remember being on those street corners talking that stuff. And there was always a part of me that had questions. There was always a part of me that wondered, where would that kind of rejectionism of everything that was the West, where would that rejectionism ultimately land us? How could we be effective? Even in those days, I remember thinking to myself, well, even if you assume that so-called white people are the enemy, the fact is what are you not going to use their tools to better your life? Are you going to decide to, go back to fundamentals, roll up the sidewalk, and live off the grid? That didn't seem to me to be a good plan. So I'd always had some kind of hesitation when it came to the things I heard on the left, on the militant left, so on and so forth. I think one of the watershed moments, there's never just one, right? But one of the big watershed moments for me was Occupy Wall Street. Because when that whole thing jumped off, I actually went down to Zuccotti Park to try to just talk to people. I thought at that moment, hey, you know something? The left, because I was still on the left, could really actually do something interesting with this moment. I sensed that was a transcendent moment When I actually got out of the subway and like walked to that area, um, it kind of confirmed what I thought, because there was all kinds of people down there. I mean, there was like the classic lefties, the protest lefties, if you want to call them, but there were also like the
The
perpetual
professional
PPs.
protesters, yeah.
Exactly. I'm gonna start calling them PPs. Uh, but there was also like I talked to this like housewife who'd come there from Long Island because with her husband, because it was like this had affected everybody. Like again, I came from a working class household. My dad had been a union member. He was in carpenters union, and his annuity lost a whole lot of value overnight on the back of this thing that basically eggheads on Wall Street had done to our economy. Yeah. And I just sensed intuitively that, well, hey, wait a minute. In terms of like hedge fund managers and fixed income guys trading on a desk at JP or whoever, like there's none of those people, statistically, I mean, compared to the rest of us. So I was like, yeah, this could be a transcendent moment. And then, as I walked around and talked to people and got the vibe of what was happening, I was just disgusted. I was first disgusted and later I was infuriated. Because what I saw a left that didn't understand how to grasp the transcendent moment. I saw a left that really didn't understand how to focus, how to triage. The whole thing about triage, like, okay, you go to what's triage? You go to the emergency room and you have a broken arm, but someone else just came in right behind you and he's not breathing. So he goes first. Okay, that's triage. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of harsh. My mom used to work as a triage nurse at some point, but you know something? Either you performed triage effectively or you were not affected at all, right? Because all the guys who were not breathing, who came in behind all the guys with broken noses and sprained ankles and what have you, they're all going to die. Yeah. So I was first I was just disgusted by all this street theater. Why can't you focus? We're talking about a very small group of people here in this financial crisis who imposed this crisis on us, who blew up the economy and now want us to pay for it. Okay. Can we align on the basis of that? Or do we insist on holding up signs that, like, okay, America spelled with 3 Ks and, Monsanto and, America is the war machine and the war machine is bad and let's dismantle the military industrial complex and free healthcare for everybody and this and that. And it's like, okay, people are here from elsewhere. Housewives are standing around from Long Island. What they want to know is like, what can I do now? What's the program? What's the plan? If we want to dismantle the military industrial complex, listen, my kids have soccer on Tuesday. What can I do today? Right? And so that kind of, self-indulgence, like on full display there. I'm not a going to protest type of person. So that was the first time I'd seen that in person. And I didn't like it. And then the media, the lefty media like MSNBC types, what have you, kind of fed into that by praising them for their lack of focus, praising them for the lack of a political program, praising them for having no concrete metrics in terms of how they're going to advance any kind of program that's going to help us fight these hedge fund managers who want to, blow up the economy. Nothing. It was just self-indulgence and self-regard and stupid. I think the term virtue signaling wasn't really a thing at that time, but in retrospect, virtue signaling gestures that didn't mean anything. And so and then I heard Occupy Wall Street people say something like, "We don't have a political plan. We don't want to get anyone into office. We don't want to take over any not even local politics. Nothing." Because what they said is that politics is dirty. And if we get into politics, then politics will change us. And that was when I went from being disgusted to being infuriated. Because I thought, well, who the fuck do you think you are? Your movement is like any other movement. It's going to grow and it's going to change and it's going to get old and it's going to die, just like you. And if you want to change history, then history is going to change you in return, because that's how that works. And so that was go on.
Yeah, it is fascinating to me that was your awakening moment of being disillusioned with professional protesters and the professional left, the bureaucratic left, the identity politics that was back in Occupy, because I mostly hear people being disillusioned with like the Black Lives Matter crowd post 2014. After yeah. So it's just fascinating to me just how constant, just like with every age group, whether you're in your teens, your 20s, whether you're like me in my 30s, or like with you when you're in like Occupy Wall Street, like no matter how far back you go, it's this consistent 2 to 3 year cycle of another professional wave of protesters who are just all of the mass discontent, popular discontent in the country, not just like for this or that like race group or this or that political background. Because Occupy Wall Street, that was 2011, like when people were starting to come to that like mass discontent after the housing market crash in like 2009.
Yeah.
And you have like 3 years after that with with Michael Brown's murder in
Ferguson.
In Ferguson, and then and then 2 years later you have like the Bernie train, people trying to hop on the Bernie train, and then and then like 4 years after that, you have a lot of the same. It's just like the same conversations over and over and over again. And I'm sure if we got someone 10 years older than you, that would be the same story. But for this
the kind of the kind of self-regarding street theater arm of civil rights, right? And here's what's interesting. And you talked about Occupy. I'm getting a weird background noise. Is that you? Oh, my bad. Yeah. So if you put it this way, by the time Black Lives Matter came on the scene, remember I said that Occupy Wall Street was just a watershed moment. It certainly wasn't the only one. But that was kind of the gateway drug to really looking at things in a radically different way. And by the time Black Lives Matter came around, I had already I had already taken my own personal transcendent moment, if you will, right? And so because of that, immediately when I read the Black Lives Matter manifesto, the original one, not the one after they changed it, the original one, where they said they wanted to disrupt and destroy the family, I was like, okay, declaration of war accepted. Good to go. Like, you're my enemy. You're not just useless. You're not just grifters. You're the enemy specifically of Black progress and Black advancement in America. You see, because the other thing that I didn't say is that I never, unlike a lot of people who left the left, a lot of Black folks who left the left, I didn't embrace the right. You know what I'm saying? Because what I got from the right was a lot of sneering contempt. I got a lot of crypto racism, and to be quite honest, crypto fascism, even though that word fascism has been vastly overused by stupid people, right? Who just want to beat up on conservatives. I get that. But
well, it is relevant nowadays when you have the Blood Tribe holding Nazi rallies in Orlando.
And don't get me started. Right. So you see where I'm going with this. So I looked across at the left, and all I saw was the same kind of race-tinged rhetoric and the same kind of again, a thinly veiled kind of contempt for Black folks. I saw Black lefties, what Sonny Johnson would call blackface conservatives, doing the same thing, talking the same shit, making the same dumb freshman year statistics error that they all seem to just love making with the 1550 statistics fallacy. Yeah. And I was like, no, that's not for me. I know the left is crazy, but I also know that I'm not interested in because I have self-respect and I care about my tribe. I care about my people, right? And so, but I had learned from Black folks like Stanley Crouch and Walter Williams that I could care about my people and care about my tribe, right, as a Black person, and also take a vital interest in the American experiment in this republic. And I could love my country with my eyes open. And it was from cats, excuse me, it's from cats like that I learned kind of how to come at the whole question differently. And that was like this rolling transcendence that opened up all these new things. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, yeah, I can, right? I don't have to I can dispense with all the stuff I used to flirt with in my young angry Black dude days of going quote unquote back to Africa. I don't have to go back anywhere. This is my country, you know. And so yeah, I'll pause there, but you get the idea.
You know, you mentioned how you went to Occupy Wall Street and there were all these like professional activists out there like promoting their pet issues. And it seems to me like that has accelerated just insanely. I mean, that's sort of like the game now. Like whenever there's you know, these, like you said, housewives from Long Island, they're coming out for some issue. Well, that's the time when these like leftist activists get to promote whatever their issue is. Like you go look at the PSL rally they did, the anti-war rally they did, and they're getting up there, and the first thing they say is like they give a land acknowledgement.
Yeah.
And they, I don't know, they were speaking in tongues or something. Like, people aren't here for that. People are here because they're against the war. But it's all, I mean, we call them professional activists. What is their job? Well, that's their job. Their job is to redirect all this energy, and if not that, then alienate people with all their like weird pet issues. I mean, I had kind of a similar development to you. I'm younger, but I was a leftist, and I can pinpoint when I got disillusioned with the left, which was I was online on some leftist forum, which I was on because I was interested in like Marx and Lenin and this sort of leftist tradition. And then there was a day where they had a purge where they banned everyone on the forum who hadn't been upvoting enough transgender content. And I'd always thought like, well, transgender, this is just like another civil rights thing. This is like a thing we support. But then it's like, no, actually, this is the most important thing. Like inflation, economics, all that stuff. We're not going to ban people for that. We're going to ban people for this. This is the most important thing. And it is like, that's these people's jobs, is to like monopolize these issues. Like we're the ones who are going to lead on these issues. And then they just like redirect it away. They're just going to take it away into some other issue that doesn't really threaten anything. Like, we know that transgender issue is pretty much a distraction. Like, no, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Like, what people are really caring about out here is like kitchen table issues. How am I going to put food on the table? How am I going to pay for my children and for their education and stuff like that? But you can't organize on that. You organize on that and you go out there and there's all these people with signs like, we got to do indigenous land acknowledgements. We got to do transgender, whatever. And it's just a deflection. And this really accelerated after Occupy Wall Street. I think Occupy Wall Street.
I think that's right. Yes.
And yep. And after that, because you're talking about, you said the stuff they were talking about was like Medicare for all and such like this, which like irrelevant. Yeah. But at least those are like
kitchen table issues. Yeah.
Issues that could exactly. And now it's
it's like luxury. It's luxury belief systems.
Now the issues.
Yeah.
Yep, it is. It's totally like these college graduates, baristas or whatever, who come out to these protests and they just want to co-opt it and promote what they want to promote, which they think is the most important thing because their kitchen table's full. So they're not really worried about that stuff.
That's a good one.
But they're worried about this most important thing. And it's just a grift. It's a grift. It's like, I mean, the topic of the stream we have tonight is we're transcending the left-right paradigm. And really, these two play off each other.
This is yes.
Neither of neither of them are ever going to talk about the kitchen table issues. On the left, they'll redirect it into transgender, rainbow flag, whatever. On the right, they're going to redirect it into this like racist, fascist LARPer stuff. But where do you go to just get the kitchen table issues? That's my question.
Yeah, we're in a moment where, you know, we have someone like Oliver Anthony explode in popularity. He was just talking with his producers. They were expecting to get 300,000 views on that video of his at West Virginia radio, and it's start sitting at like 25 million of a week. It just gets this massive level of attention because he breaks down the crux of the issue just in 3 minutes. Like, my dollar is not as I'm working harder than I ever have for less money than I've ever made. And like, this is not happening randomly. It is people in Washington, the rich men north of Richmond, who are inflating my dollar and making sure that that I'm just a debt slave, and just breaking it down in 3 minutes in words that people can understand. And we're in one of these rare moments where it's not it's not just like an opportunity that the left can monopolize, or the right can try and monopolize, or try and make into a fringe issue, where like both the fringe left and the fringe right are attacking this guy, and making it even more apparent that it really is just a popular frustration that you can't like co-opt. It affects everyone. We're all affected by this trend of working harder than we ever have for less money than we've ever made. And yeah, it's asymmetrical. We're not saying it's not. But just making that it's broad but pointed at the heart of the issue. It's not that he's making it broad that you're no longer talking about issues that don't affect anyone. It's that the issue affecting everyone is that broad. No matter how asymmetrical it might be, it touches us all. And our enemy is all the same enemy. This very select group of people in Washington, that's the head of it. It's the deep state. That's who it is. That's who it always. That's the enemy number one.
Well, that's the thing.
And then you have these secondary. Yeah, then you have these secondary people who serve the rich men north of Richmond. The deep state, the liberal hegemony, the matrix, whatever you want to call it. The people who are the foot soldiers of them, who we have to sift through, tirelessly just sift through all of these foot soldiers for the ruling class that is willing to install these divisions, who is willing to do surveillance against and dox people like us, or regular folks who are complaining about like how hard their life is, and who are willing to advance this reactionary degrowth, austerity lifestyle on working people. It's
well. I mean, I think the thing is. So here's one thing. I agree with most of what you guys just said. I would say that, for example, trans issues are not quite. They are certainly this gender madness is a luxury belief system, but it's a luxury belief system that has real and concrete implications for people. For example, people who have kids, because what's happening is not just. I mean, look, you guys obviously like. I am no communist, nor a socialist, nor especially a Stalinist. But you guys know what Antonio Gramsci said about common sense, right? He said, if I can destroy common sense, I can destroy civilization, or I can destroy society, right? So the destruction of common sense is something you have to pay attention to, or the attempted destruction of common sense is something you have to pay attention to. I think I tweeted some time ago that you should engage in arguments about things like taxation rates with a good grace and with charm and civility and winsomeness. But draw your weapon and be prepared to fight to the death to defend the assertion that 2 + 2 = 4, because that's a matter of life and death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was about to say that it is. It is the 2 + 2 = 5
Yes,
of
sir.
American
Yes, sir.
fascism, right? But here's why I say it doesn't matter. Well, this leads into what my proposition is for transcending the left and right, is that we need to have a class politics, because the fact that you have Oliver Anthony blowing up while both the left and the right are condemning him, they're not in touch with the people. There's a sleeping giant in American politics right now. I mean, what, like 60% of
Right.
people don't even vote. They know the whole system's rigged, and there's nobody who's going to represent their interests, so they're just checked out, and they just don't give a damn. They know they're getting screwed. They know, when they see a cop, they know that's not someone who's going to defend or protect them, and that's most people in this country, right? So for the transgender issue, here's what I would say. If you were to take a working class lens to this issue, what's really the issue here? Well, you have parents going to school board meetings complaining about what the school is teaching with like pornography and shit, and they get labeled domestic
Yep.
terrorists.
Yep.
That's a serious charge. That's a serious charge, because when they call you a terrorist, that means you don't have rights anymore. They've spent, since 9/11, terrorists have been getting thrown in jail and tortured and drone striked, and it doesn't matter because you're a terrorist, so it's carte blanche, right? And now this label, which we've been applying on people in Afghanistan and Iraq for decades, is getting brought home, and they're applying it to parents who are talking about their children's education. But I would say what the real issue here is, which when people talk about the transgender issue, they never bring this up, is that the working class issue here is that working class people do not actually have a say in their children's education. So like what people on the right say is they'll say, oh, well, just homeschool. Well, if I'm a working class, I can't homeschool. I have to go to work, right? So I have to send my kids to school, but I don't actually have a say in what happens there. I go if I go to the school board meeting.
This is why class politics. What I was going to say was that this is why I like the thrust of what you're saying, but I don't think class politics goes deep enough. That's the fundamental problem. Go on, sorry.
Well, let me finish.
Yeah, and I'll follow up. I'll follow up after you.
Yeah, so I'll wrap up quick. So the way the debate is structured with left versus right is never going to question this fundamental: why do we have to send our kids to public school for 7 hours a day? And if you don't do it, Kamala Harris will throw you in jail. Why is that? Because right now it's like obvious to people that they're getting brainwashed into this like gender ideology. But the thing is, public school has been brainwashing for the children of the working class since its inception. That's why it exists. Who are the people who succeed most in public school? The obedient. It doesn't teach you how to be smart. It teaches you how to be obedient. Why do you have to wake up at 7:30? Why do you have to raise your hand and ask to go to the bathroom? Why do you have these regimented schedules? Because they're teaching you to eat shit when you go get a job. They're training you from kindergarten that it's the same structure as like a 9-to-5 job. So when you go to that 9-to-5 job, if you got all A's, you're going to eat shit because you got all A's for eating shit. Like the smart kid in school is the one who's going to question the fundamental structure of the school. He's the one who's going to be asking, why does this teacher have authority? And that's not the kid who's going to get A's. The one who's going to get A's is the obedient one, right? And that's how it's always been. And people are just getting wise to this because it's getting so egregious with like the genderbread men and the porn in libraries and stuff. But the way that this debate is framed is not like, what is this institution of public school actually for? It's, well, what is the nature of the brainwashing going to be, right? Like the right says, oh no, we just need to go back to this like George Bush era bourgeois patriotism. And then the left, this is the finance capital Malthusians, they're pushing this gender ideology because they want to reduce the population. And that's the debate. So that's what the left-right divide is. It's debates within the ruling class. There's ruling class people who want to push the gender ideology, and there's ruling class people who aren't down with it and want things to stay as they are. But the working class doesn't have a seat at the table. They don't get to say like, wait, why are my children getting raised by the state? Why do I have to send my children to state schools for 7 hours a day? And if I don't do it, I get thrown in jail. That's not a part of the question. So that's what I would say about transcending the left-right divide is we need to be, left-right is just bourgeois politics. And we need to be doing working class politics. We need to say, no, all these people are what Therese said. They're the foot soldiers of the ruling class. Because, you know, if you're making less than you've ever made and working harder than you've ever made, that means there's someone out there who's working less than they've ever worked and making more than they've ever worked, right? It's a zero-sum game at the end of the day.
This is
And that's the kind of thing I think we need to be talking about to awaken this sleeping giant that brought Oliver Anthony to the top of the charts while he's getting attacked from both sides of the so-called.
That's exactly right. I know Barracks wants to go next. I just want to say, like that, you just asked a foundationist question. This is in our discussion circles. This is something we talk about all the time, and it's specifically phrased as you phrased it. What is this thing for, right? Because that's always, and on my journey away from the left, that was where I ended up. Was like, wait a minute, why am I accepting the terms of this either or question? Why? I don't wish to engage in that either or.
Mm-hmm.
What is public school for? Oh, and then you start, because I'm a geek, I start looking at history. It's like, wait a minute, for most of human history, education meant showing your children how the world works, right? And showing your children how to do everything, you know? And so, yeah, exactly. What is this thing? And this is a fundamental question. It's a foundationist question in my estimation. What is this thing for? Policing, same thing. You know, one of the other reasons I never went to the right was because I never liked how they simped for law enforcement. You mentioned the Patriot Act. It's very interesting that the same Patriot Act that lefties like me back in the day were saying, hey guys, you don't want to do this because you think right now, you think that this is only going to apply to people who don't look like you. But if the wrong person gets in power, they're going to turn it around on you. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. I would rather have been wrong, but I was right. And so were a lot of the people who were arguing against the Patriot Act. Justifiably nervous about crime. And so, yeah, I want to hear what Barracks has to say, but yeah, you're on the money here. This is exactly where I wanted to get to with this. Yeah.
I mean, people, I just think people don't have a conscious experience of centering the class question, but they're doing it even if they don't realize they are. Specifically with the MAGA movement in the United States, it is the premier counter-hegemonic movement in this country against the central levers of power, which are wielded by liberals, both progressivist liberals and conservative liberals. They're both. It's one uniparty. MAGA is the mass movement that is building dual and contending power, that is not satisfied with ceding ground to the corporate uniparty, to private interests, like all the elite families in the country, like the Waltons or the Pritzkers, that aren't. The MAGA is not. They're not just going to cede ground to Wall Street, to Silicon Valley, and the tech laptop class. They want the entire. They want the entire center of political power, which is significant because they are representative of the productive forces of this country, not exclusively, but by and large, the largest representative of that working class consciousness, and that working class proximity to like production, manufacturing, transportation, all that stuff we talk about here on the Barracks. Because you mentioned Antonio Gramsci, who was the one who popularized the idea of hegemony, of this all-encompassing worldview that influences us, and that moves us in a particular direction based on like who controls these central levers of power. But how people have criticized since Antonio Gramsci has since died, but how people have criticized him was that he never came up with an argument for counter hegemony, of dual and contending power. And that's what we have in this country, even if we don't realize it. And that's ultimately the power of of Marxism, is recognizing that these movements happen, whether or not the political party or most of the people in the country recognize themselves as communists or whatever. That development happens independently of their ideas, but it is making those ideas conscious of grasping those levers of institutional power, so that the working class in a particular country don't have to share hegemony with these private interests, with finance monopoly. That's ultimately the power of MAGA and this trend that's been going on for the past year of MAGA communism, is just making an unconscious development a conscious one.
That's right. But I think here's the thing. I'm going to turn around now and beat up on the MAGA movement for a little bit, because I have much the same sense that you do about the MAGA movement. They are a genuine, or they're an actual populist political movement. And that's good. We need more of those. Part of the problem I have with the MAGA movement is that it has inherited, because it rose up among people who were conservative, many of whom were conservative voters in the first place. It's inherited some of the same flaws and weaknesses and kind of short-sightedness that the Republican Party had. So for example, when I talk about transcendent politics and seizing the transcendent moment, well, one thing is, well, look, when are my white conservative brothers going to understand that, like, black folks, that first of all, there is a black working class? When are they going to understand the black working class is staunchly conservative? And when are they going to understand that many people in the black working class, even if they don't vote for Republicans, even if they didn't vote for Donald Trump, are ready to hear a message, are ready to hear a populist message? In other words, it seems to me that either you're a populist movement or you are not. And so if you are, you have to really be populist, and you have to, like, appeal to the people. And I don't see that yet. I see that Republican outreach to non-white voters, non-white conservatives, has been terrible, consistently terrible for the last at least 20, 30 years. MAGA outreach is slightly less terrible, but still terrible. That's a problem. That's a real problem. And I personally really wasn't able to get a handle on this until I kind of took this gateway drug into thinking about religion, thinking about theology, not just me personally, re-exploring my faith after I'd lost my faith decades ago, and kind of coming to it with different eyes, but really thinking about what that meant, thinking about what, going back to what Milkman said, thinking about these why questions, and thinking about these questions as challenges. We are all created things. We are all fundamentally equal, right? That is equal in our value, in our transcendent value, not in our value in the economy. That's a construct. It's a useful construct, but it's a construct. We're all equal in our fundamental value. Thinking about deep fundamental questions like, who is my neighbor? And I don't see yet that enough of my MAGA brethren have really embraced this question, really kind of answered this challenge in a way that engages with people, or at least sets the conditions for engagement with people outside of the base. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like you can't.
So
Yeah, go on.
you say we're equal in value.
Wait a minute, your audio. Wait, your audio is breaking up. Yeah.
Breaking up.
So like equal, if fundamentally equal, like how so? Like morally, materially, spiritually.
Yes, we all created beings. We're all children of God. We're all equal in that sense, right? And
we can't. Yeah, we can't. We can't. We can't.
Wait a minute.
We can't measure. We can't measure. We can't measure a
You
soul.
know, wait a minute.
Is
you don't have to
the
listen. You know your wife loves you. You can't measure that. You know you love your kids. You can't measure that. So I don't want to hear just because we can't measure it. See, this is the thing. Wait a minute. Every era, every historical age, to me, is captive to its reigning metaphor. People of the steam age were captive to the metaphor of steam, which is why people like Sigmund Freud had a whole system based on these metaphors having to do with mechanisms and pressure vessels. This is a metaphor. You know, if you hold it in, if you hold your emotions in too long, something's going to explode. No, because emotions have no mass. They are not, in fact, steam. Yeah? But people of that age were captive to the reigning metaphors. In our current age, in the computer age, in the information age, we're captive to the metaphor of measurement, or to the idea, to the metaphor of computability. Some things can't be computed. That doesn't mean they're not important. Some things can't be reasoned about. That doesn't mean they're not important. In fact, the things that you can't reason about are often the things that are most important. This pattern shows up everywhere. Think about the founding documents of the USA. The first 10 amendments of the Constitution, Bill of Rights, is a body of law that has been placed beyond the reach of politics. Why? So that our politics could go on to operate in a sane way. Right? So yes, you can't measure worth, but you don't have to. If I believe that there is nothing particularly about me that makes me better than you as such, now we have something. Now I can be better at you at something, but that's different. I can have a larger skill set than you, but that, or a more appropriate skill set in a given context than you, but that's different. We're equals. This has to be fundamental, and it has to be beyond the reach of reason, so that we can sit and reason with each other about everything else. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree that
was some good shit, Carbon Mike. I really like that.
Yeah, and I agree that, you know, as a fundamental, like, human value, and what we are all, and what we are all all of our inalienable rights, those are all the same. It'd be like enshrined in the Constitution, but like just going off with like the constitutional example, like the founding fathers of the country used rational and institutional language to say that these are the like inalienable rights that you have, but these are the institutions, these are the levers of power, these are the specific offices that are helmed by people that are going to defend those things, and not just defend them, but also expand them over time. And we need to, if we want to defend and expand what shrinking amount of rights we have in this country, we need to rationalize and materialize those institutions, those levers of power, like our proximity to manufacturing, which puts food on our table, like political representation, which in America is represented entirely representative of the corporate class, or levers of power in the form of the education system, which, like Milkman said, is just training you to be obedient to the private corporate class. So it is those material things, those measurable material things, which we need to be incredibly jealous about. We need to be like, we need to see them, and we need to be jealous to have those things, because we don't right now. And that, and I do agree with you that MAGA is really, like I said, in terms of asymmetry, is overrepresented by white people in the country, underrepresented by the black working class, which we got into earlier in the stream.
I have to stop you
But
there. I didn't say they're under or overrepresented in any particular racial way. That's not what I meant. Go on.
Apologies. Where you had said that their outreach was that they weren't doing good enough outreach for the black working class, correct?
Yeah, among non-white conservatives of all stripes, really. Because I want to go back. I just want to make sure, like, we hit this because this is important. First of all, I like where you're going. Yes, there are material things that we need to accomplish, and there are real, actual, tangible institutions that we need to figure out how to either mend or end. Yes. I'm just
and what I'm saying is those intangible things, we can only achieve, we can only really come into our own as individuals when we
that's
those
100%,
material
150%
things.
right. In other words, I believe that, like, man, like a man has certain rights with which you must not interfere. But the only way that a man who is a citizen of a country can actually enjoy those rights is if there are material institutions, to which he can kind of refer to, when someone tries to violate those rights. So yes, 100%. But I'm merely saying that the primary assertion of the rights of man, or of a man, that primary assertion must be beyond the reach of reason. It must be beyond the reach of it must be axiomatic. And that's true in all cases. If you want to do math, numbers must be sacrosanct. You cannot balance your checkbook if one is only one on Monday, but it's 5 on Wednesday to 7 on Friday. One is always one. Why? Just because. Now you can do math. So yeah, I'm with you on the need. I don't want to give the impression that I'm descending into woo. Like, yes, there's like a hard political fight because we're fighting for things, right? And these are tangible, real things in the world, institutions, like, departments with real budgets, with real money, right? But I'm saying we're fighting because of something that is intangible and beyond the reach of reason. It has to be that way. If not, then we're always going to be subject to someone else's materialistic, numerical take on something. For example, there was Jon Stewart, who I can't believe I used to like at one point in my life. Amazing. But Jon Stewart was on doing some interview, and he was talking about this whole thing of this degeneracy that they're pushing in schools, and degenerates reading pornography to kids. And he said, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't that. He was defending that too, but the specific thing was he was talking about child mutilation. And child mutilation was a good thing because this and this many doctors in a survey said that child mutilation leads to better outcomes in the long run. Okay. Now, to me, like, I don't need to reason with that. Like, mutilating children is wrong. What is mutilation? It is destroying or removing a healthy organ. So don't mutilate children ever. That's it. Why? Because that's it. And if you have a fundamental belief that's different, and you think mutilating children is fine and dandy, declaration of war accepted. Let's go. Right?
100%.
I gotta say, I know I came on with Teray, but I kind of gotta start with Carbon Mike here because I think he's right. I think we need to take these. I think there's just axioms that we just have to accept on faith, and because you're talking about all these material powers, like the powers of finance, capital, and such and such, but where do they really get their power come from?
Right.
I'm sorry. Where does their power really come from? I'll tell you, because the reason the CIA has so much power is because we do their drugs. The reason the mob has so much power is because we watch their porn. The reason fucking OnlyFans, like, it keeps recruiting women is because guys are out here buying it, right? Like, our sin is converted into the ruling class's power. So I really do think politics is not just enough. Like, we need to have like a great awakening where we accept things just on faith, like we accept things just on faith, like dealing with our massive addiction problem. I mean, this is a nation of addicts. And they lose their, it's like the opium wars in China. It's a way to keep the people down. Or they did the same thing in Ireland with alcohol. And that's, I think, what's really dangerous for them, is a movement that's not just political,
Has to
but
be.
spiritual.
Has to be. Can't be any other way. We will not get out of correct. We will not escape from godless liberalism, with godless conservatism. No. Because look, even, I mean, again, when I say this, I get in a lot of trouble because people think, oh, you're trying to call me to Christ. I'm not trying to call anybody to Christ. I'm not qualified to do it. That's not my objective. But what I'm saying is, if you don't, look, everyone has to have a belief, a value system. When I say religion, I say it in the broadest possible terms. A religion is a hierarchical system of beliefs with a core set of axioms at the top. That can be whatever you want to be, but that's what it is. It can't be just a collection of beliefs. That's the problem we've seen, by the way. I mean, feminists and feminism have been dead to me for a long time, but it was the behavior of feminists during the COVID freakout that really kind of showed me exactly what they were, right? And the reason they were that way, the reason why, think about it, right? These people saying, hey, my body, my choice, my body, my choice, my body, my choice, my body, ad nauseum for decades now, right? And then what happens, right? We get an outbreak of bad flu that was really bad, okay, admittedly. And the government, the patriarchal government says to women, hey, listen, drop your trousers. I'm going to give you a shot in the ass. It was concocted by my friends in a multi-billion-dollar transnational company. And then put this muzzle on your face, and then go home and stay there until I tell you otherwise. And by the way, download this app on your phone so I could see where you've been. And feminists said, okay, sure, no problem. Right,
my body,
exactly.
your
Now,
choice.
they did this because they have no belief, they have no religion. They have a collection of values. And the problem with a collection of values, you can just shuffle them like a deck of cards. Oh, this circumstance is not so good for pick another value, right? Religion is a hierarchy of values with a core of axioms at the top. And once you have that, I don't care what you call it, now you can reason about everything else. Now you can put things in their proper place. Now you can put first things first. Now you can reason about why taking a medication or doing a thing or doing a non-pharmaceutical intervention, whatever, is good or bad. In terms of something that is fixed, you can navigate by means of fixed stars, which is what people who actually navigate for a living do. They don't navigate based on some shit that's floating in the ocean. It doesn't make any sense. You navigate based on a fixed point.
Well, I would say it's not just that it's values that you would get crucified for, right? It's values that no matter what happens,
Yes,
you're going
sir.
to stand by. Because they say my body, my choice, but when it becomes inconvenient, when they would have to really stand up for it, they're not willing to. Whereas, I mean, I'm not an expert on religion or anything, but I know Christianity has a history of martyrs and this tradition of martyrdom, where the people who become saints are the ones who will literally lay down their lives for their beliefs. Liberals aren't going to lay down their lives for their beliefs. Like,
They want
come on,
they want you to lay down your life for their beliefs.
Right, exactly. They'll lay down your life for their beliefs, but not their own. But that's what we need. We need, if we're really going to make the change that we want, it can't just be like a political program. You need to have people who believe in this beyond any earthly delights, who will sacrifice all the riches of this earth for what they believe in. And nobody on the left or right is really like that. If they were offered enough money, and it happens all the time, they would start shilling. I mean, look at Kyle Kalinske. He's shilling for Biden now. In 2020, he was kind of pretending not to. This is what always happens. So a movement where people will actually lay down their lives for their beliefs, that would be a threat to the establishment. They wouldn't even know what to do with that.
In the context of a political cadre who can act as leadership for a nation, absolutely. This idea of for values which have kept civilization alive for thousands of years, absolutely. But for the common person, for someone who to be like this cadre for political leadership, they have already gone through so much sacrifice, who have already lost their dignity, have lost the ability to put food on their table, to raise kids properly, to raise their kids humanely, safely. When they try to take kids,
Hang on a second, Barracks.
Yeah,
Barracks, you're breaking
you're
up
really
bad,
breaking
bro.
up, man.
Oh,
Yeah, but are they still doing drugs? Are they still watching porn? Are they still taking Adderall? That's almost like
that's what I'm saying.
It's almost like our social contract. That's our social contract today.
That's what I'm saying, is that for the people who should be expected to hold leadership, what they are in forward should increase the abundance of the person. Should
Okay, but wait a minute. Hang on a second. See, the first problem is, again, we're talking about abundance. I'm a big fan of abundance. It's much to my taste, right? I think plenty is a good thing. But I'm not inclined. Again, is increasing abundance, for example, of energy, a valid political objective? Yes. What I'm saying is, it's what it is not is a valid foundation. It's not. Okay, you have to have something. You have to have something deeper than that. And this goes. I understand you guys identify a certain way, politically. I can say that, for example, I had a big problem. I've always had a big problem with the right in America using communism or socialism as this jump scare. Coming up as a young Black dude, I had people, my parents and their friends, most of their people are from the West Indies, and so people from that part of the diaspora were very knowledgeable on the kind of things that the U.S. was doing in this hemisphere during the Cold War. And it seems to me that during the Cold War, we had this thing where we were simping for one system because it was supposedly the opposite of another system, not because it was good on its own merits. And for those of you who haven't heard of G.K. Chesterton, you should go read some G.K. Chesterton. Go read What's Wrong with the World. Go read some of his essays. He was no one's socialist. He was no one's communist, but he was vehemently against the hegemony of hypercapital. He didn't call it hypercapital, but that's what he was talking about. And so my thing is, I want to be clear. I'm conservative, but I don't think, like, part of our problem right now as conservative people, as people fighting back against this madness, is that we've spent, a huge amount of time simping for free markets. And then we wonder why our children decide to go with the lefties. Well, think about it. Why do people fight? Why do soldiers fight? For rational reasons? Nonsense. Soldiers don't fight because they're rational. They fight because they're fired by something else that goes beyond rationality. And that's separate from the idea, which I believe in more or less, that all war is a racket. Right? So
would I be able to interject for a second? So, how you guys doing? So, I wanted to. What's up, guys? So, I wanted to point out, and I think this kind of farthers both you. your point, Carbon, as well as the point of milkman here, okay? Crown. And specifically, before these types of revolutionary events happen, there was a spiritual awakening, right? You had the first Great Awakening and the second Great Awakening for the American Revolution and then the American Civil War. These provided the ideological foundations and spiritual foundations. First, to say, screw the crown, we have liberty, we have, all men are created equal. And then we farther that point in the context of the Civil War that, no, it is not just to enslave human beings for the betterment of a few select people. And both of those things exist on that spiritual foundation of the Great Awakening. So I largely do agree that it is an absolute necessity for a Great Awakening to happen in the United States. And I don't think it's just going to be a spiritual awakening. I think it's part of it, but I think it's also
Yes,
a
sir.
class
Yes, sir.
awakening.
100%.
It's the awareness of, no, there is something fundamental about humanity. We are all of value based on our spirit, based on the inherent values of humanity. And we're not just going to sit here and allow, this country to be taken over by Satanists, because this is exactly the
100%.
direction that this country is going down right now. That's what I'm speaking as someone who used to consider myself an atheist. Now I'm not a Christian. I consider myself a deitist. I subscribe to the idea that there definitely is a creator because the world is extremely complex, right? But I don't subscribe to a particular religion. But I love the values of Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and other, if you will, non-pagan religions that uphold this inherent value in humanity to take care of. I mean, if you look at the Bible, you look at the Quran, you look to take care of the widow, to take care of the sick. These things are fundamental. And the reason why it puts these emphasis on these people that say the state or institutions or even individuals might deem have lower value based on their ability to contribute or where they are from or what they look like. They ignore those things, ignores those differences, because it looks at that thing that unifies all of humanity. You are a human being, then therefore you must have value.
Yes.
And I agree that has to be the foundation for a political movement
Yes.
in the United States.
That's right. It's not
inevitable.
sufficient. Okay. I'll agree with Barracks that it is not a sufficient condition, but it is a necessary condition. And by the way, I see I'm back, and the Mr. Lilly show, you got your hands up. I think we're probably going to go for a while before we get into a Q&A section, but I'm looking forward to Q&As as well. So I see you. I'm not ignoring you, and thank you for showing up. Let me point out something else. I want to hear back from the Barracks, but I just wanted to dig a little deeper into this. Like, putting it in, you'll forgive me for putting it in terms of my journey, right? But I'm like Yankee Tanky. I don't call myself a Christian. I call myself a pilgrim. Yeah, because I'm very interested in Christianity, and I'm following it, and I get a lot of kind of wisdom and knowledge from my Christian friends and from looking into the history of that religion. That seems that there seems to be something special. I agree what you said, Yankee, about the Abrahamic religions, but I think there's something special about Christianity. But forgetting about that for a second, again, this fallacy of opposition that we fell into as a culture during World War II. I'm very sorry, after World War II, during the Cold War, right? Where it's like, okay, well, anything the market does is good. Okay, well, listen. The problem is this. I can definitely agree. I don't want to be instrumentalized by the state, which is why I disagree with communism. But the problem is that capitalism, first of all, capitalism and communism are not opposites. They're not opposites. They're kissing cousins.
They kind of
No,
are.
they're not. No, they're not. Because one, here's the thing: the opposite of a bad idea is not a good idea. The opposite of a bad idea is very often another bad idea. And here's the thing about ideas, right? Most ideas are bad, meaning that human coexistence is a complex problem, and most solutions to complex problems are wrong. Now, I am not interested in being instrumentalized by the state any more than I'm interested in being instrumentalized by Amazon.com. And the problem is that we've never had a politics, a broad politics in America that has come at the thing from the standpoint of the sacred human ideal. We've come close at times, but we've missed the mark. And I think that's the fundamental problem. And so when I talk about, for example, the way when I criticize conservative outreach to Black voters, when I criticize MAGA, the professional MAGA people, I don't, my MAGA brethren who are just working people like me, I'm not trying to put them on the hook, but I'm saying the professional voices in MAGA, right? When I criticize their outreach, I'm criticizing it on this basis, that they are ignoring like fundamental things about humanity, like respect, like the fact that if you wish to persuade someone, you have to approach them courteously. This is basic. It's not race-based. It's basic. If you call my home a shithole, I'm going to say, go fuck yourself, to whatever else you have to say, even if what else you have to say might be good. So that's my point, is that we've shifted focus, or we've neglected the necessity of focusing on the sacred human ideal first. Once you do that, then you can say, something, prosperity is good, right? Eradicating disease is good, right? Ameliorating unnecessary suffering is good. But that's because you have to have something. But why is it good? Well, it's good because human beings are sacred creatures, and it's good for human beings to flourish. It's good for us to have big families with lots of babies. It's good, human beings are not just mouths to feed. On what basis do we attack our Malthusian brethren, in our neo-colonialist Malthusian brethren in the environmentalist movement, other than to say that my fellow human being is not just a mouth, he's a soul, he's a mind, he's a pair of hands, he's someone who may discover the cure for cancer, or may just raise a family and live a good, normal, middle-class existence. But he's precious, and so don't fuck with him for any reason. And so I think this doctrine provides for all of that. It provides a pushback to the hegemonic left, a pushback to the hegemonic right, a pushback to the Malthusians, the neocolonialists, the environmentalists, and all the Satanists and everyone else, because it starts with the concept of an ideal, and then it builds from that. I'll pause there, but that's what's on my mind.
Yeah, and first of all, just saying my primary point up front, the primary disagreement, because is that capitalism and communism are more than ideas. That they are physical, all-encompassing modes of organizing a society, irrespective of people's ideas, irrespective of the belief systems held by the politicians who rule the country, by the people who run who do the nitty-gritty work in a country. Irrespective of what's in their head, capitalism is one mode of organizing the physical, machines that produce everything, and that transport them from point A to point B. and 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 it's a relationship, a physical relationship to those produce and to those machines and to each other. Communism is not just a different physical, all-encompassing mode of economizing a society, of producing things and getting them from point A to point B, and our relationship to those things and each other. It's not just different, it is antagonistic, because the political subject of each, even if they were amicable, even if a capitalist and a communist were friends with each other, even if they were blood relatives and they got along smoothly, the physical mode of putting bread on their family's table is antagonistic to one to the other. They must be in a zero-sum game, often to the death, for supremacy, for dictatorship of their society, to make the executive decisions of how bread gets produced, who gets their share of it, and how, and what the future generations will do to secure those same necessities. Fundamentally antagonistic.
See, here's why I see what you're saying. I understand. I like where you're going with this, because you're always, and this is a good, by the way, this is a very good energy to have in a space, right? Because you're always trying to kind of concretize things, and that's good, right? So I appreciate that. But here's where I differ with you and why. Okay. So first of all, this one of these. Early on, it occurred to me that one of the reasons why we were unable to one of the reasons why we were able to why the Cold War did us such damage, such great moral damage, is that we were thinking about these systems as being opposites of each other, when we should have been thinking about these concrete systems, as you describe, as simply different ways of organizing human energy and ability and talent, and organizing the material world, and organizing the networks that make things happen and decide who gets what, and so on and so forth. They are both concrete systems, but they're not opposites. In other words, here's one way in which they are the same. Someone's got to instrumentalize somebody. How about that? In other words, for pure capitalism to work, somebody, even the impure variety that we practice in the US, somebody has got to instrumentalize somebody. In order for communism to work, somebody has got to instrumentalize somebody. That's the part I have a problem with. For example, I have no problem with, you see, I have no certain industries. I think under certain circumstances, it makes tons of sense. And conceding that the government may do a shitty job of running those industries. I was, just so you know where I'm coming from. Again, I'm an American. I'm a patriot, and I guess you'd call me a capitalist, but I'm not a capital fetishist. I was and remain a huge fan of Vladimir Putin and what he did for the people of Russia. And it didn't quite line up with the kind of standard received wisdom structural adjustment bullshit that the IMF and the World Bank have been running on third world countries full of black people for years, right? But after the Soviet Union dismantled itself at the end of the Cold War, remember, gave up something like 750,000 square miles of territory without a single shot being fired. Extraordinary. After they dismantled themselves, okay, the plan for them was for the West to come in and chop the country up and sell it for scrap. And that was going dandy until Putin stepped in and nullified a whole bunch of contracts. He said, you know something? We're not going to sell you these oil and gas and timber fields or whatever in Sakhalin or wherever else for pennies on the dollar or the ruble or whatever. He's like, no. It's like we're a country. This is our stuff, right? So the answer is no. And by the way, you oligarchs, you get to keep your money, but stay the fuck out of politics, or else. And some of them didn't. Some of them were hard-headed, didn't want to stay out of politics, so they got the or else. Well, that's their business. That's how it is, right? So I'm not advocating for capitalism per se. I'm starting from a foundation of the sacred human ideal. Do not instrumentalize people, and respect private property. But understand that corporations are not people. They're corporations. We in the United States treat them like people because of a legal fiction that we've chosen to engage in. So there's all kinds of things we can do to make things better. But part of it starts from rejecting that part of the left right, transcending, I should say, that part of the quote unquote left right dynamic. That idea that like everything capital does is fine and dandy. No, it's not. No, and sometimes capital should be prohibited from doing certain things. That's very different from whether or not you agree, and I do agree with Hayek that command economies are bad. Command economies are bad because they don't work. They are a poor design pattern. But all our design patterns must be focused on one thing, which is the sacred human ideal. Anything that violates that, violates the sanctity of the family, that instrumentalizes human beings, that attacks children, that does all these things, is bad and should be opposed. I don't care whether it's a capitalist doing it or a communist doing it. I'll pause there.
When you say instrumentalizing, could you elaborate what you mean by that word? Because that might be where some people might be getting caught up.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So when I say instrumentalize, what I mean is that how can I put this? If a system uses a person merely as an instrument, in other words, simplifies a person down past what the fundamentals of humanity are. So that person merely becomes a tool. For example, if I say that I have an idea about how to increase grain yields, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply seize, all the small farmers, their land is now mine, so I can do this thing, and it's for our own good. It doesn't matter whether my idea has merit or lacks merit. I have turned this farmer, this human being, into an instrument of policy. That's a problem. Okay? So that's one thing I mean by instrumentalization. You could go further. If you have an idea that, we have this new technology that we're trying out, we need a large-scale clinical trial. Hey, I know we'll insist that people have to be vaccinated for COVID-19. Yeah. Okay, well then, whether my idea is good or bad, it doesn't matter. Whether the shot is effective or anything, it doesn't matter. I've committed the cardinal sin of using a human being, a sacred human being, as an instrument of policy.
So where is your line to divide whether does it need to be like a voluntary thing, say like a federal jobs guarantee, where people have the choice to get a government job to rebuild the country or whatever?
Carbon, I think you're talking about conscious capitalism there.
Well, maybe. I mean, if you call it that, you call it that. I have no personal, affinity for or aversion to that term. I mean, in other words, I don't. That's the thing. The word capitalism doesn't make me feel any particular way. The word communism doesn't make me feel any particular way. I'm a systems guy, right? So I'm like, okay, what is a system that has the best chance of working while preserving the things, while not transgressing sacred boundaries? That's my thing. So it's all on the table.
You're talking about conscious capitalism, sir.
If we are, okay, great, wonderful. I don't care. Wonderful. Do you know what I'm saying? I won't run from it. I won't run towards it. It is what it is. But going back to the question, a jobs guarantee is different. because of course a jobs guarantee is you elect to work for somebody. That's different. But even then, right? There's all these complexities that creep in because, for example, I'm trying to think of a better example than a jobs guarantee. Let's say a I know, like a loan refund or loan forgiveness, right? So now if I say if we've already gone past the idea that taxation is theft and we said, okay, listen, we have to pay some kind of taxes, right? Then nonetheless, we always keep this sacred humanness in mind. We always understand that even if we need to have a system of taxation, it is always the case that we are confiscating something from our fellow human being who worked for that thing. And so now, so it's wrong for me to take the money that I got from my fellow human beings and my citizens, for example, and use that to forgive loans that we gave to a very small group of them, because that's a regressive tax on everyone else. So college loan forgiveness is a regressive, paid for by the government, is a regressive tax on people who didn't go to college. Okay, that's wrong. Why are regressive taxes wrong? I don't have a mathematical answer to why regressive taxes are wrong. And I'm obviously not an economist, I'm an engineer. So the reason why it's wrong is because human beings are sacred. Don't fuck with them. You know, try to be fair. Why should you try to be fair? Because all men are equal in the eyes of God, if you want to put it like that. So that's where I'm coming from.
I think that, uh, and I hate to get real, Marxist like theoretical here, but like it kind of comes back to authority by angles, right? Where it's this question of there is going to be some form of authority that makes people, for lack of better terms, or to use your term specifically, instruments to achieve certain political goals, right? And the question is, where is the line for authority? When does it get across an ideological line for you, right? And I think
That's a great question. That's a great question.
I think that that's what I think a lot of us would like to know, because as communists, we have a more, we believe that like the people that, like, we call it the
Sorry about the audio connections. We're experiencing some audio.
Wait, I have this muted.
Great question.
Twitter Spaces here. Lost audio in my headphones. So we're gonna try and
the first part.
get
Let me ask you the second.
back into this in just a second.
Hello, dude. I've been having technical difficulties. I've been trying to jump in for so long, and then I realized no one could hear me.
Yes, there might be a way to do that. If someone proposed such a method, right? On what basis would I evaluate that method, whether it's good or bad? I would evaluate that method on the
I don't know. I
basis
requested.
of how careful it was not to transgress the sacred human ideal. And so, yes, can government compel people to do things? Well, yes. Should government compel people to do things? Well, not so much, right? And so we should always make, and of course, there's going to be, for example, I mean, come on, I drive a car, I have to stop at a stop sign, right? The state of New York says so. Okay, well, does that mean the state of New York is instrumentalizing me? Well, not really. I am compelled by law, under pain of losing some of my property, to stop at stop signs. Okay, but that's a kind of thing where you can see clearly that that doesn't attack my family. It puts certain time constraints on me, because certainly if if I ran all the stop signs or ran all the traffic lights, I'd get wherever I'm going faster. So yes, the government is technically imposing an inconvenience on me, but I can understand if I just understand in other words, it's possible to reason from first principles about the nature of what a traffic intersection is and say, well, it's probably better. On balance, it's probably better that we allow government to quote unquote compel people to stop at stop signs and stop at traffic lights. So I don't want to imply that I'm like that like there's no role for government, and because I'm not a libertarian. Again, my problem with libertarians is the same thing as my problem with a lot of modern conservatives. They have no theology, they have no religion. So they're always talking about liberty, but they can never tell me why a man should be free. And so if for example, if a man is just a collection of atoms, if he's just meat, then why on earth should he be free? I'm sitting in my place right now. I'm looking around at several collections of atoms I own. I can do what the fuck I want with them, including throw them on the fire. So that's the second question. The first one, where is the line between? I just want to read back. You're asking where is the line between instrumentalization and non-instrumentalization? Is that the question?
I mean, I guess that would probably be the way that you would phrase the question for you to answer it correctly. I'm phrasing it a little bit differently, but to use your own language, I think we understand what you mean by it now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I have to say, in some, I have to be very
also,
honest.
just real quick, so sorry, but
Yes,
could you add the Barracks and the Milkman back to speakers?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I see the request. Yeah, sure. Milkman. Okay. Barracks
Very
is
sorry.
up.
Go ahead and answer when you're ready.
Barracks should be up in a second. Okay. So, and Milkman should be up too, as a matter of fact. He looks like he's a speaker on mic. Anyway, so I have to be honest with you. I don't know if I can give you a formula for that. That's something I've got to really give some thought to, because there should be some kind of principle that defines it. You know, I think maybe I can say it this way. The greatest violence you can do to a man is to kill him. The second greatest is to attack or injure or kill his family. And then after that is to attack or injure or damage or confiscate his property, right? So that's kind of my mini hierarchy, yeah. So above all, whatever moves we make in terms of governance should keep these things, foremost, right, in mind. Do you have a proposal to do something? Well, what is that going to do to ordinary people? Will that require someone to have his life taken from him without his consent? Yeah, that's probably a hard no, absent any other consideration. Of course, if he's a criminal and you have the capital punishment in your country, that's different. But yeah, parents have parental rights. This is a sacred fundamental. Might it be necessary to violate parental rights in certain situations? Maybe. But chances are no, especially if you have a plan that requires for you to deprive large numbers of people of their rights at a stroke, then something's probably fucked up with your plan, you know. And then again, of course, we can also say that we can all think about coercive laws that actually have some basis in reason. And these are laws we can argue about, we can fight about, we can try to repeal them, but they're not. But all laws, and of course, most laws, except for things like the Bill of Rights, are government coercion of some. They're promises, right? All laws are an imposition to some extent. And the thing we have to have, I think, is always a critical mass of people in whatever political movement we have that keeps a steady downward pressure on the amount of coercion that comes from government. Because bureaucracies, I should say, tend to expand without bound. That's what they do, and they tend to self-preserve. And so we always have to be pushing in the opposite direction. Is there a golden mean that we will reach someday? That's beginning to sound like utopianism. I would just prefer to say that we have to orient ourselves. If we're truly populists, then we have to orient ourselves toward the people, which really means orienting ourselves toward the person. And that's not an individualist argument. I'm merely saying that your conception of what a person is must be upstream of all these other considerations. I hope I answered the question correctly without mangling it.
I think that you answered most of the question. I think that what might catch up some people within, certain types of communists, specifically our brand of communism, is that the focus on, and I know you're not calling it individualism, right? But there is a much larger focus on the individual versus the collective.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Would you agree?
Right. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. And so let me let me try to clear that up, because this is a very good point. And this is why one of the reasons why I've never really liked libertarianism, because it's just like, well, first of all, individualism can't. First of all, the individual. Here's the thing: the individual and his own survival or his own prosperity cannot be the paramount value in a species that is by definition social. We're social primates.
Yo, can you
Right?
hear
So
me?
so it's ridiculous. We can see immediately that
Teray, can you hear me? You're muted.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh my god, dude. I hate spaces. What a fucking mess.
Man, I had to. Yeah, we might have to jump back in and re-request.
Dude, it's been 2 hours. Dude, I was getting so mad because I was like, why is everyone talking over me? Like I'm trying to talk. And then I realized like nobody can fucking hear me. It's fucking spaces, dude. Spaces is a fucking mess.
It's a mess.
I'm on laptop too. I think it works better on your phone. I probably should just be on my phone.
Yeah.
I've never done it on laptop before. They just added this feature, but I left and rejoined and I still couldn't talk. Like fucking A, man. We should just have them on stream instead, because I hate spaces. I hate space. Elon, dude, maybe he shouldn't have fired 90% of his staff. I don't know, because the search function is fucking broken. Spaces is fucking broken. Like, get your shit together. Oh, the video player on X is dog shit. Like, get your shit together, Elon. What's going on here? That was a really good conversation when we were in it. I don't know. It's a 2-hour stream. I don't know if it's worth it to go back in. I think you should. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
For those of y'all still in the YouTube, yeah, go and hop into the Twitter Spaces. Go.
Yeah, it's still going with Yankee, but I don't know. You should send him a DM just saying we had technical difficulties.
Yeah.
And we ended as we started. I wanted to give a defense of communism, but maybe another time. I mean.
Yeah, and I mean, the point of reaching out to people is not to proselytize. It's to find. Yeah, it's to.
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna say what I honestly think, and I think I wanted to respond to. He was talking about instrumentalized by the state, but that was like 30 minutes ago. Now I've been dealing. I don't even know what to talk about anymore. I mean. Yeah, you can check out the space. He's still talking with Yankee, but maybe I'll send him a DM apologizing.
Yeah.
We ended how we began, as above, so below, starting with technical difficulties and ending with the beginning was just me being an idiot, but this, I think, was Space's fault. I was getting really frustrated that everyone was talking over me, man. I was kind of pissed, but no, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, it might be good. It might be good to keep the world separate. Twitter Spaces and the YouTube stream. We've been going for almost 2 hours, y'all. We appreciate you who've been sticking around this long. We always encourage you to go to the Twitter Spaces to hop into the conversation to keep it going, because we we
No,
don't.
Jesse,
We don't want to
wait.
proselytize, but we do want to get our points across so that we can find common ground with with working people. Jesse Ward says it's no mistake.
Yeah, that's not true. It was technical difficulties. It was because my computer was dying, and I had to move it over, and it was something with my mic. He definitely didn't kick me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to push back on that. That he was very open for discussion. It was some sort of technical difficulty.
Yeah.
But I got some points in, Ugh. Fucking Twitter Spaces, dude. It does not feel like the everything. It feels like the everything's broken app right now. Elon's got to get his shit together.
Yeah. So we'll wrap it up here, and we appreciate everyone who's tuned in. Make sure to tune back in tomorrow. We'll be having a 9/11 stream. We'll be bringing in one of the infrared gorillas, PJ Cornell, who it'll be an earlier stream around 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll be getting a veteran's perspective of a post 9/11 America and the security state that we've been living under for the past 22 years.
Yeah.
Should be good. We'll get all of our technical difficulties sorted out. I guess I'm going to have to go and get another pair of headphones off of Temu because I've been.
Yeah, your headphones, dude. Curse stream. What happened tonight? Your headphones are breaking. My mic's breaking.
But we persevere. You think Screws in a Bell? You think Screws in a Bell is here for the because we're making the millions and we have our own studio? You think Jesse Ward is here because we have George Soros backing? No. Our longtime 3 fans are here because we persevere.
Shout out to 3 fans.
Because we put in the work, because no one else is willing to stream as much as us, to reach out across the aisle, to reach out across political groups, across identity groups, to unify the people wherever they are. That's why they're watching. That's why Jackson Hinkle's reaching out to us to give us a follow on the Barracks. It's because we are building the people's deep state, and that is not going to look pretty, but it is going to be effective. We're making moves.
We should have had Carbon Mike on stream. We gotta just have people on stream in the future. I don't want to fuck with this Spaces stuff.
Yeah.
And we got the 9/11 stream tomorrow. That should be fun and controversial. And drop a follow, drop a subscribe, whatever it is you Zoomers do. And sorry about the technical difficulties. That was a curse. That was a curse stream. Teray pissed off a gypsy or something yesterday.
We'll.
I know I didn't. Well, I guess I don't know I didn't, but I don't think I did.
I know I'm going to be hopping back into that Twitter Spaces, but for now, for here on this YouTube video, whether you're watching on YouTube from our new central YouTube page, or you're watching from the Barracks on Twitter at the Barracks Live. The last thing I needed to do is push the Discord. We're on Discord. You should join if you want to continue the conversation. You want to be a part of the people's deep state. I'll be dropping the link in the chat. Let me pull it up now. I know that the chat doesn't outlive the live, but on the off chance that some of the people in the live chat are not yet a part of our Discord, hop into the Discord, because we are always looking for people to jump in on the conversation. With that being said, I think we've gotten all of the formalities out of the way. We'll end this cursed stream and come back tomorrow even stronger.
There's some clips there maybe while it lasted.
Right. So in the meantime, my name is Teray, and this is my co-host, the Milkman. But on this Sunday, doing the best with what we got, that's all we got, folks. We're out.